much time it was going to take to get here so you can calculate his speed.
You said a little bit. A little bit you did. Yeah, I got factory brain.
Hey, he ran here all the way.
I wouldn't doubt it.
You probably won't crawl.
Call the meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Mayor Arnold.
Here.
Alderman Bibb.
Here.
Alderman Decker.
Here.
Alderman Hudson.
Here.
Alderman Corbett.
Need to adopt the agenda. Need a motion?
Move with that.
Second.
Motion second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
New business. Review the annual audit financial reports for fiscal year ending 2021. And Jason Barnes, I guess we'll let you take the lead on this.
I don't have anything specifically to discuss regarding the audit unless you guys have questions. I have Ken Youngstead and Jared King here from Craft CPAs. They're our audit firm. They have some highlights that they wanted to point out, so I'll let them.
I have some highlights I want to point out.
Yes, sir.
This is 2 years in a row with no findings.
Yes, sir. That's how it should be.
And I have been here a lot of years, and that's only 2 years. Good job, Jason.
Thank you.
Yeah, good job.
Thank you. This is Ken.
Great. Thank you all for allowing us time for the meeting, and Mayor, thank you for pointing that out with Jason. You have a great team here, so certainly appreciate the opportunity to serve as your auditor. So I'm Ken Youngstead with Craft CPAs, here with Jared King, a senior manager with our firm who's been involved with your audit for a number of years. Jared's going to give a few introductory comments about the audit process, some general things, and then I'll come up and give you a few highlights on the financial statements themselves, and then we'll be happy to answer your questions as we go through. So, Jared?
So we have a letter that we'll be finalizing in the next few days, and then sending to Jason to kind of send out to all of you that summarizes the audit results. So we haven't finalized that letter, but I kind of want to go over some of those key items with you guys, just to let you know. So this year there weren't any new GASBs or new accounting pronouncements that were adopted, which always makes things nice and easier. So no new accounting policies this year. We didn't run into any odd or unusual transactions, so that was all clean. We did have some audit adjustments, and those will be summarized when you get the letter. But I'll tell you, we had a few adjustments for the pension and OPEB, which are kind of standard. Every year we're going to have those. And then one for bond refunding that you guys did. So no real kind of spots where we ran into errors and had to make corrections. So super clean audit this year. The books are in really good shape, thanks to Jason and Rachel and the whole team. No uncorrected misstatements. So every once in a while we run into something where we have an adjustment and we talk to Jason and we may not want to make a correction. So none of those. This year, no disagreements with Jason or anybody else, and then no difficulties. And then big one, we're not aware of any other consultations that Jason or anybody else at the city had with another accounting firm. Kind of shopping around for different opinions. So we're not aware of any of that, and so really, I mean, it's kind of like you pointed out, Mayor, it was a very clean audit, no findings, and no big issues this year. So, and I'll turn it to Ken. He'll go over a few highlights in the actual financials. So.
All right, thank you. I'd like to start with our audit opinion, which is on pages 1 and 2. I think you all have a copy of the draft. And so if you flip over to page 2, the top paragraph, the opinion paragraph, is where we have an unmodified opinion, where we say the financial statements present fairly in all material respects, the financial position and your activities, and so that's good. That's the opinion that you want. We also speak in this letter about some of the required supplementary information that we have. There's a management discussion and analysis that I'll point out to you all. That is something that Jason puts together, but is a good summary if you're looking for year-over-year activity. For the the city, and then there's also some schedules related to post-employment benefits and pension plan schedules, so just required information that the state calls for and that you have in your financial statements. And then other information, just other supplementary schedules as well. So they're all spoken to in these other paragraphs. Paragraph on page 3, we make reference to a report that's in the back of your audit that is related to government auditing standards, things about controls and all of that. And that is also an unmodified opinion there. If we had findings, that's where you would see them identified and pointed out. So we didn't identify anything during the course of our audit to report to you on that front. So flipping to page 4, this is the management discussion and analysis. Again, something that you all put together, and we incorporate it into the financial statement. But again, looking at page 5, the top of page 5, it is really a good summary where you can see year-over-year activities and how things changed. Your net position, or really your balance sheet, is summarized here, so you can see in your governmental activities, your capital assets are up. And then you've got columns for business type activities, and then the total government. These are also obviously in the financial statements, but this tells a little bit more of the story in a narrative format as well of some of the major things that have happened. So you'll see listed just below this table some of the capital asset activity with the event center and other projects that you have going on. If you flip over to page 7, you'll see changes in net position, really income statement summarized year over year for the city, broken out into governmental activities and business type activities. And revenues were up, a good year. I think looking at the change in net position, you'll see on the governmental activities, that's 1.865 million of an increase, and business type activities 2.5 million, so a total increase of 4.4. So good news on that front. As you continue through the management discussion and analysis, you also have information about your capital assets and debt, where you can see the comparison there. We'll look at that in the financial statement itself as well. So before getting into the main financial, any questions on that? And I do realize some of this, be going through pretty quickly. If you all do have something that I skip over, as we get into the main financials, you've got about, 80, 90 pages here, so I'm not going to cover everything, obviously. So, unless you want to, but we'll all be late for the next meeting. So looking at page 12, this is your statement of net position, government-wide statement. So this really has everything on your balance sheet, your capital assets, debt, pension liability, deferred inflows and outflows, things like that. So you'll see total assets of 86 million. As you look at liabilities, total liabilities of about 20 million. You'll see, because I know there's been questions from time to time, I'll also point out the footnotes, but I'll make specific mention of the net pension liability is 714,000. That's up just a little bit from last year. And also the other post-employment benefits, about 2.1 million. So also up a bit from the prior year. There's footnotes that describe that, and we'll look at that in a few. Looking at page 13, the page you might have to turn your page sideways to see this in better form, but this is basically your governmental activities and business type activities broken down for expenses, and then your charges for services, coming over to the net activities over here on the right side of the page, and then down below your general revenues from things like property taxes and impact fees and other items. And so this is where you'll see your change in net position overall of 4.4 million for your governmental and business type activities combined. So this is the summary of everything. And moving to page 14, there's your balance sheet, which is probably more like what you see on a more regular basis. You don't have your capital assets here and things like this, but this is your governmental funds broken down, for your general debt service, park sales tax fund, and then a number of other funds that are included in the non-major governmental funds. there's a listing of some of those funds on page 24, and then starting on page 61, you've got detail of all those other funds listed out in supplementary schedules. So there's a lot of detail on the back related to that. Page 15 is a reconciliation where you can get from these government fund statements, your fund statements, to your overall government-wide statements, the balance sheet that includes everything. And so there's a number of reconciling differences that is pretty typical of what you find. Just how do you get from point A to point B? There's a number of items here. Starting on page 18, you've got budgetary comparisons for your general fund and proprietary funds. As you go to the following pages, proprietary funds, things like your wastewater fund, and then you've got solid waste and stormwater funds as well, included in those proprietary fund schedules. So the statement of net position is on 19, and essentially the income statement on page 20 for your proprietary funds. And then you had statement of cash flows as well. I hadn't planned to spend time on that. But as we get in, any questions on those major fund schedules up here in the front? As we move into the footnotes to the financial statements, the policy notes that you'll see starting on approximately page 23 and going for several pages, they're quite similar to what you've seen in the past. With no new accounting standards adopted this year, really this information is similar to what you all will have seen in the past. I will reference you to page 34. And this is your capital asset schedule, where you can see for your governmental activities and your business type activities on page 35, a reconciliation of the beginning of the year balances to the end of the year. You all did have some capital projects going on, so under your governmental activities, you'll see that in the additions column, you've got about $7.6 million between your land and construction in progress, and then other things that are being depreciated. So total capital asset additions there. For business activities, about $1 million of an increase in additions, and then of course we have depreciation on those items. The other thing I was going to point out in the footnotes themselves that may be important is note 5. That's your long-term debt and other obligations. So that's on page 36, the very next page. You all did a bond refunding, this year, and so you'll see, increases and decreases really in that top table, top section of the table, and so that's your bond refunding, and then had a couple of other capital outlay notes and things like that were issued during the year. And so that beginning to end of the year reconciliation is there. The next page is business activities, where you really had more just principal payments on your notes there. Okay, and as we move on, I didn't have this page flagged, so let me make sure I get to the right place. Wanted to point out, as we talked about before, the pension obligation. If you go to page 46, here you'll see the changes in the net pension liability for the year. Total pension liabilities in that first column, and then you've got your in the second column there, the contributions, the funding of the plan, essentially, to get to a net pension liability of $714,000. So I believe in the prior year, there is another schedule that I've got flagged here that will show you the beginning to end of the year. I think it's up a few $100,000. I will point out that the valuation dates for the plan is basically a year behind, so this is a June 30, 2020. You'll probably see that might improve over the next fiscal year, because if you think of the market at June 30, 2020, we've had some recovery since then. So we'll see what happens on the investment return, but I think it should be positive. You might see a little better result next year on that front. Page 49 is your post-employment benefit, the OPEB plan. And you'll see that roll forward from beginning of to the end of the year as well. And this is typically, you'll see this as a pay-as-you-go kind of thing, so there's not an asset or a funding, of that liability at this point, and that is typical. Any questions on those? Okay. So moving to the, so I'm looking at page 57. And this is, a historical look, one of the supplemental schedules of the pension liability. And so I thought you might find this useful of the, the plan years, basically. So you'll see the 714,000, you can see the history there. And then flipping over to page 59, you'll also see comparable information on the OPEB plan. Okay. And then starting on page 61, just to let you know these are here. I don't plan to cover these in any detail, but you do have, a combining balance sheet here for your non-major governmental funds. So it's summarized in the statements that are in the front, but you've got more detail back here to refer to on some of the different, funds that are considered non-major. So, State Street Aid Fund, Police Drug Fund, etc. So there's a series of schedules that go on for a few pages. And then same for proprietary funds. Looking at page 64, where you'll see some of those non-major funds, the solid waste fund and the stormwater fund, where you've got the assets, liabilities, net position, and then revenues and expenses on page 65. All right, more supplemental schedules. So there's a bit more detail about your revenues on page 76, where you can see property taxes and sales taxes and charges for services, other things like that. And then obviously a lot more detail on your expenses as well for the different categories, looking at page 77. So this also goes on for a few pages. On page 81, a little additional detail on your long-term debt as well, where you can see another look at the roll forward and maybe a bit more detail on your beginning to end of year balances, so you can see the bond refunding there and other issuances. Then you also have maturity information on those long-term debt obligations that's on page 82. You can see what future years looks like on that. That goes into page 83. One bit of, I'll call it good news because it was, something that didn't necessarily have to do this year, but you see on page 84 a schedule of federal and state awards. Last year you all were subject to uniform guidance audit, a single audit. This year the federal expenditures of federal awards was less than $750,000, and that being the case, we did not have to do the single audit procedures. This year on that, but still one of the required schedules is to show your expenditure of both federal and state awards, and so that's on page 84 and 85. I mentioned earlier there is a report in the back as well that is a government auditing standards report, and that's page 88 and 89. That is an unmodified opinion there about compliance and internal controls. And to the point that was made early on in this presentation, you'll see on page 90 that there's nothing that we identified during the course of our audit to report as findings to you on that. So again, clean opinion and good results, and we had great help from your team. So I'll say that again, as we went through the course of the audit. So I know some of that was fairly quick, but happy to answer any other questions or dig in deeper to any particular sections that you might have.
Next year, will be in a new building, and you'll have a conference room right next to the finance department, so you won't have to be running around all the way back and forth with paperwork, so it'll be a lot easier for you next year. So we're looking forward to that opportunity for you and for us.
exciting.
We appreciate your hard work. You guys hang out here a long time doing this.
Well, you all have been wonderful to work with, so we appreciate the relationship.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
I know the mayor's already thanked you, Jason, but I appreciate you working with this team and getting these clean audits the last 2 years. I know that's been something that's weighed heavily on me for many years to get to that point, and I'm so grateful that you guys were able to get it done.
Yes, that is, that's not all me either. That's
You've got a whole team.
in the office and even in other departments. I mean, that's everybody that works at the city basically doing what we're supposed to do.
We've been working at it for a long time, to get there. Then we got over employees, and I think all of it adds together, it's a good job. Excellent.
Thank you,
Good team with a great leader. Good job, Jason.
thank you.